I was not supposed to be on that street. This is the thing I keep coming back to, the detail that sits underneath everything else. I had taken a wrong turn. Not dramatically, just the kind of wrong turn that happens when you are walking and thinking at the same time and give more attention to one than the other. I had been heading for the tube. I had ended up 2 streets east of where I meant to be, which put me on a quieter road, which meant I was the only person who heard her. She was sitting on the steps of a closed shop at 7:20 on a Friday evening, holding a shoe. Not crying dramatically. The quiet kind. The kind you do when you have decided to just get through something. When the tears are more like a physical response to a bad day than any kind of breakdown. She had a heel in her hand, separated from the shoe, and she was looking at it with the expression of someone who has assessed a situation, found it comprehensively against them, and is deciding what to do next. I stopped. I said, "Do you need help?" She looked up, and she said, before anything else, before her expression had time to do anything expected, she said, "I know you." Not a question. Not quite a statement. Something between the two. Delivered in a voice that was very still, the way people go still when something arrives that they were not prepared for. I looked at her, and then I knew her too. "My name is Sam Elliott. I'm 33. I'm an architect. I design buildings for a living, which means I spend a significant amount of my professional life thinking about what a space asks of the people inside it, and what it gives back, and the gap between those two things. I live in a flat with a good desk and a drafting table I use more than the desk, and a kitchen that is the room I spend the least time in, which my mother considers a character flaw. I am going to tell you about the night I met Nadia Brent, because that is where this begins. But I want to tell you first what I knew about her when I crouched down on that pavement, which was almost nothing, which is the only honest way to start. She had been at a conference, the same conference I had attended 2 years earlier, a design and sustainability event, the kind that runs for 3 days and fills a hotel with people who all have opinions about the same things, and spend the conference either confirming those opinions or finding the 3 or 4 people whose opinions are interestingly different and talking to them instead. I had been the latter kind, so, I found out later, had she. We had shared a table at dinner on the second evening. Not by arrangement, the kind of shared table that happens when there are 12 seats and 2 strangers arrive at the same moment, and the hostess gestures at the remaining gap. We had sat next to each other for 2 hours. We had talked. I am going to tell you what we talked about, because it matters. But first, the pavement. She was sitting on the 3rd step. The shoe was a dark heel, navy or black, I couldn't tell in the evening light, and the stiletto had come away cleanly, which was both better and worse than it sounds. Better because it was a straight break, repairable in principle. Worse because she was 20 minutes from anywhere, and clearly had somewhere to be. I crouched down. "Can I look?" I said. She held out the shoe and the heel. Her hand was steady. The crying had been private and was now over, or at least on pause. She had that particular composure of a person who has decided that the situation is bad enough without adding the additional problem of falling apart in front of a stranger. I looked at the break. Clean separation at the pin, the kind that needs a specific adhesive, and 20 minutes to set, neither of which were available on a pavement at 7:20. "It's the pin," I said. "I know," she said. I felt it go. "The good news is it's a clean break," I said. "The bad news is I have a dinner in 15 minutes. "Yes," I said. "That's the bad news." I was still crouching, looking at the shoe. Thinking in the specific way I think when I'm looking at a structural problem. Not about the failure, but about what was still intact and what could be made to work within those constraints. There is always something that can be made to work. This is both a professional conviction and, I have been told, a personality trait that can go either way depending on the situation. I have, in my jacket pocket at almost all times, a small multi-tool, the kind that architects and the extremely prepared carry, which are often the same people. My colleague Fen finds this very funny. It has, on 2 occasions, been extremely useful. I took it out. She watched me select the smallest flat head. She said, "What are you doing?" "There's a way to reattach it temporarily," I said. "It won't last forever. It'll last dinner." She was quiet for a moment. "Then, you're serious?" "I'm an architect," I said. "Structural improvisation is professionally adjacent." I heard her make a small sound that was almost a laugh. I was still looking at the shoe, working the pin back into position with the flat head, applying the pressure from the right angle, finding the tolerance in the break. And that was when she said it. She said, "I know you." I looked up. Her name was Nadia Brent. She was 31. She worked in sustainable materials research at a firm across the city, which had been why she was at the conference 2 years ago. She had been presenting a paper on biocomposite applications, which was how I had known which table to be interested in. I had seen her name on the program and thought, that's an interesting question. And then at dinner she had been next to me, and the question had been even more interesting in person. Here is what the 2 hours at the conference dinner had actually been. She had the way I described, patient, incremental, building an argument piece by piece before she let you see the whole structure. But what I had not understood until much later was that this patience was not technique. It was consideration. She was not building slowly because she thought you needed it. She was building slowly because she was genuinely uncertain at each step and wanted the uncertainty visible. That is a rarer thing than it sounds. Most people perform confidence in the direction of their argument. She performed the argument and let the confidence arrive at the end, if it was warranted. We had talked about the gap between material theory and architectural practice, her side and my side, looking at the same problem from different buildings, which is the kind of conversation that goes somewhere because neither person is trying to win it. She had asked me, at one point, what I thought the industry was most wrong about. Not what I thought it did badly, wrong about. I had said I thought it was wrong about permanence, that buildings were designed to outlast their purpose, and nobody had quite agreed on whether that was a virtue or a failure. She had gone quiet for a moment, and then said, "I think about that with materials, whether durability and adaptability are the same quality or opposite ones." And I had said I didn't know, and she had said she didn't either, and we had both found that a satisfying place to arrive. At the end of the dinner, she had given me her card. I had given her mine. We had said goodnight. I had gone back to my hotel room and written 2 paragraphs in my notebook about the question she'd left in me about material fatigue, and had thought, I'll email her next week. I had emailed her in 3 months, which is not next week. The gap between intention and action is, in my experience, where most regrets live. 2 years, and now she was sitting on the steps of a closed shop on a street I had not meant to be on, holding a broken shoe, looking at me with the specific expression of someone processing an improbable fact. "The conference," I said. 2 years ago, she said. "You were presenting," I said, "biocomposites." Something crossed her face, not surprise exactly, more like the confirmation of something she had already suspected, as if she had thought, when she looked up from the steps and saw me crouching over her shoe with a multi-tool, that it might be me, and had told herself that was an absurd thing to think, and was now finding out it was not absurd. It was simply true. "You emailed," she said. I went very still. I had sent the email at 11:15 on a Tuesday evening 3 months after the conference. sitting at my desk with the specific courage that sometimes arrives late at night when the professional reasons not to do something are less loud than they are during the day. 3 short paragraphs about a question she had left in me regarding material fatigue and whether durability and adaptability were the same quality or opposite ones. A question I had apparently been carrying for 3 months without fully admitting to myself that I was carrying it. I had ended with, "I'd be glad to continue this, if you're open to it." I had sent it, and then not been entirely sure it had gone. "Once," she said, "about 3 months after, you said you'd been thinking about something I said about material fatigue." She paused. I was going to reply. I didn't. I looked at her. "I didn't know you'd sent it," I said. "It came out more plainly than I intended. I mean, I thought I had. I wasn't sure it sent." "It sent," she said. We were both very still for a moment. I was still crouching, which gave the whole exchange a slightly absurd quality. A man on a pavement with a multi-tool having the conversation he had been not having for 2 years. I was aware of this. Neither of us mentioned it. "Why didn't you?" I asked. Not accusatory. Just the honest question, the one the situation had earned. She looked at her hands, at the shoe, still held between us, still broken, still waiting. "Because I was going to," she said. And then I thought about it too much, and thought about it some more, and by the time I stopped thinking about it, it felt too late to reply to something from 3 months ago without it needing an explanation. And then writing the explanation felt like too much. And then another month passed. She stopped. She looked at me directly. "It wasn't that I didn't want to. I want you to know that." Something in my chest moved. Just slightly. The small internal shift of a thing that has been filed under, let it go being quietly retrieved. "I know the feeling," I said. "I waited 3 months to send it." She was quiet for a moment. "Then, you were thinking about material fatigue for 3 months?" "Among other things," I said. The corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile. The beginning of one, held back until she decided it was warranted. I finished fixing the heel. It took 4 minutes. The pin seated correctly. The pressure held. The brake was stable enough for an evening if she was careful on the stairs. I handed the shoe back to her. She slid it on, stood, tested the weight. "It'll hold," I said. "Thank you," she said. She was standing now, which meant we were at eye level, which meant the crouching on the pavement proximity was over and we were just 2 people on a street in the ordinary world. She picked up her bag. She looked at me. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Home," I said. I took a wrong turn. She tilted her head. "From where?" "The tube," I said. I was thinking and not paying attention. She was quiet for a moment. The particular considering quiet of someone deciding whether to say a true thing. "I'm going to dinner," she said. "It's a work thing." "An hour, maybe 90 minutes. A pause. "If you wanted to," after I looked at her. At the shoe I had just fixed. At the street I had not meant to be on. "I don't have anywhere to be," I said. "I know," she said. "You said you were going home." "Home isn't anywhere to be," I said. "It's just where I was going." The corner of her mouth moved. "There's a place on the same street as the restaurant," she said. "Reasonable wine, good corner table. I'll text you when I'm done." "You don't have my number," I said. She looked at me steadily. "You're an architect. You have a card." I have poor instincts around people who are several steps ahead of me. I find it more relieving than alarming, which is probably its own kind of information. I gave her the card. She put it in her bag. She looked at me one more time with the specific focused attention I remembered from the conference dinner, the kind that meant she was paying proper attention. The kind that asked something of you without demanding it. Don't take any more wrong turns, she said. I'll try, I said. She walked toward the restaurant. At the corner she turned, not all the way, just enough, and looked back, briefly, with the expression of someone confirming something they thought they'd seen. Then she went around the corner and was gone. She texted at 9:15. Corner table. Already ordered wine. The work dinner ran long, I'll explain. Come find, I had been sitting in the flat for an hour and 40 minutes. I had made tea I had not drunk. I had opened a project file and stared at it. I had thought about the conference, and the email I had sent and been uncertain about, and the 2 years between then and a pavement on a street I had not meant to be on. I went and found her. The corner table was exactly right. The kind of table in the back of a room that feels separate from the noise without being apart from it. She had ordered a bottle she called Reliable, which it was. She told me about the work dinner, a difficult client, a contract that was almost certainly going to change shape before it was signed, the specific exhaustion of performing certainty for people who needed you to be certain. I listened. I asked one question that redirected the story somewhere more useful, which she noticed. You do that, she said. Do what? Ask the question that changes the frame. She turned her glass once. You did it at the conference too. I was explaining the fatigue problem, and you asked about the opposite, what would have to be true for the material to hold, and I had to stop and think about it. Did it help? I said. I used it in the paper, she said. I cited it as an anonymous contribution from a conference dinner. I looked at her. You could have emailed to tell me that, I said. I could have, she said. We were quiet for a moment. The wine was good. The table was right. Outside, the city was doing what cities do on Friday evenings, which is to say it was full of people going somewhere and arriving, and the ordinary noise of that. I thought about emailing, she said after a moment. Several times. I kept not doing it for the same reason I didn't reply. I kept waiting for the right thing to say, and then it kept feeling later than it was. And now? I said. She looked at me. The focused attention again. The kind I remembered from the conference dinner, the kind that asked something of you without demanding it, that waited for the real answer rather than the social one. The wine was good. The table was right. Outside, the city was doing what cities do on Friday evenings, which is to say, it was full of people going somewhere and arriving, and the ordinary noise of people making choices. I thought about the conference. I thought about the notebook paragraphs I had written and never sent. I thought about the email at 11:15 on a Tuesday, and the 3 months before it, and the 2 years after, and the pavement on a street I had not meant to be on. I thought about what it meant that she had seen me crouching over her shoe and said I know you before she said anything else, before thank you, before hello, before anything that gave either of us room to pretend we were strangers. She had named it immediately, whatever it was. Now I'm at the right table, she said, with the right wine, and I'm not waiting anymore. I held her gaze. Something in my chest settled, not dramatically, the small private landing of something that has been in motion for 2 years finding a place to stop. I took a wrong turn, I said. I know, she said. I'm glad you did. She reached across the table, not taking my hand, just resting hers near it. An offer. Clear. Without disguise, made by someone who had decided she was done waiting for the right moment and was simply making one. I turned my hand over. Her fingers found mine. Across the room, someone laughed at something, and the evening continued around us, entirely indifferent to the fact that 2 years had just been collected from the floor. She told me, a few weeks later, what she had thought when she looked up from the steps and saw me. She had thought of all the streets. I told her I had thought the same thing. Approximately 4 seconds later, she said, 4 seconds is slow. I said, I was focused on the shoe. She said, you're always focused on the structural problem. You did it at the conference too. I said, is that a complaint? She said, no. It's why I remembered you. The email lives in my sent folder. I have looked at it once since that evening to confirm it had in fact sent 3 short paragraphs about material fatigue and a question I had thought about for 3 days after the conference, ending with I'd be glad to continue this if you're open to it. She replied to it, eventually, from the corner table on a Friday night, 2 years late and exactly on time. She still has the shoes. The heel held for the whole dinner and for 6 months after, which I mentioned once and she said was not the point. The point, she said, was the pavement. I told her the point was the wrong turn. She said those were the same thing. She was right. She usually is. Nothing had been lost in 2 years, just set down on a pavement and picked back up by a man who took a wrong turn and happened to know how the broken thing worked.